Hello and welcome to another edition of Empathy at the Table. I'm your host, Tony Anagor, and I'm a negotiation skills trainer and a leadership coach. I'm also somebody who's endlessly curious about how we navigate high-stakes conversations and conflict and leadership from the inside out. And that's why I started this podcast. It's the space where we explore negotiation and leadership through the lens of emotional intelligence. And I talk to experts around the world, whether they be in business, procurement, psychology, hostage negotiators, education, academia. And my aim is to allow them to bring their bodies of work and experience to us here so we can share and all learn to become better leaders and better negotiators. Today, I'm really pleased to invite a special guest. His name's Chuck Kissel. Now, there is a backstory. I met Charles last year on a holiday in Los Angeles, and I was immediately taken by his calm approach to leadership and business. He is the Executive Director and CEO of CSU Fullerton Auxiliary Services Corporation, and he oversees a complex and diverse portfolio from property acquisition and food services to HR, IT, finance, and grants, all within one of California's leading higher education ecosystems. And what really struck me about Charles was during our conversation, he told me how he worked so hard at one point that he almost lost his life. And that completely changed the way he looked at things. And when I asked him, what's his driver? What's his passion? Why is he still working? He said, well, Tony, I can't honestly tell you that I really want to leave a legacy or have a driving purpose. My company has been good to me. And so my purpose is I want to ensure that I do everything I can to create the conditions for those people coming up under me so that the company can give them exactly, if not more, than it gave to me. I think that's a wonderful philosophy to have. And what sets Charles apart from many, many other leaders is his perspective, which is so compelling, and how he blends the deep operational leadership with a genuine passion for people, technology, and purpose. Really looking forward to this conversation with Charles, affectionately known as Chuck. Let's get into Empathy at the Table with Chuck Kissel. Hello and welcome to another edition of Empathy at the Table. And I'm pleased to welcome, I'd like to call him a colleague, but he's not. He's a friend, somebody that we met last year on holiday, believe it or not. We met 2 days and we have stayed connected for the last year, and I've been very, very impressed with what he does and how he does it and who he does it for. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Chuck Kissel to Empathy at the Table. Welcome, Chuck.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, this is new. This is your very first podcast ever, right? You've never done one of these before.
I've watched many of them, but I have never participated in one. So yes, this is my first participating.
Well, thank you. I mean, we on this podcast, the whole idea of what we do is we want to look for people who are champions in their industry, who are thought leaders. They may not be household names, like, I don't shoot for world famous people, but I look for people who are masters in their own areas. And many of these people are working away quietly, like you are in your area, becoming a master and really having an impact. And so I really wanted to create a space for us to be able to share your leadership style, your views on negotiation, and your life in general. So, Chuck, over to you. Would you like to just share with us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Sure. I would think some would probably argue with me being quiet about how I go about things, but I think it's all in perspective. So I'm executive director and CEO of a company. We're a mid-sized company, CSU Fullerton Auxiliary Services Corporation. It's a nonprofit, 501c3 California corporation, which is really designed to support Cal State University Fullerton, which is one of the 23 campuses in the CSU higher education college industry. I've been within the company for quite a while, actually. I'm on my 32nd year within the company, which is kind of unusual to have that loyalty to one entity, as well as being able the opportunity to stay employed with an employer for that length of time. People say, yeah, I started when I was very little. I would say younger, definitely. I was in college when I started working for the company. I was a part-time employee, and over those 30-some plus years, I've worked my way up in the part-time ranks, and then in the full-time ranks, and then in the C-suite, going from COO to CFO to CEO. And then I sit on this, I'm an insider, so I'm a director of my organizational board, as well as I sit on 2 other boards as well, which is a JPA insurance board for the state of within the state of California. We cover about $25 billion in coverage, and then my company size, mid-size, we're about a $70 million company, and I have just under 2,000 employees that I, let's say, oversee from time to time.
2,000 employees that you oversee.
They keep you busy, especially in California.
I can imagine. So when you think about leadership, Chuck, how would you define your leadership style?
You know, I've reflected on that a lot over the years, and it changes. I was one of those where you don't leave me in a bowl in a china place. I would go in and I would destroy it. And that was my younger. I would just, I saw a problem, I tackled it, and you know, that was the younger. You grow over time, and you develop skills, and you develop that, hey, maybe that's not the best approach. Yeah, you got the job done, but what was the cost along the way? And you find that there are better ways to approach those types of situations. And so these days my leadership style is more, people would say charismatic. My background is in sales, so I sell very well. And so sometimes, and I tend to be very thoughtful. That frustrates some of my employees sometimes because they come to me saying, hey, I want a decision right now. And I'm very analytical. My educational background is entrepreneurial management and chemistry. So I have that chemical background, which is analytical thinking. And anyone in the sciences want to have all the data in front of them before they make a decision. And so a lot of times somebody will bring me a problem, and a lot of times I'll be like, I'll get back to you. And what I'm doing is I'm thinking about it. A lot of times I want at least 12, 24 hours to think the thing through. And what I'm doing is I am going through every possible rendition of outcome and weighing the pros and cons. And then I'm also doing my fact-finding and research and talking to anybody that I need to. And usually the following day, usually it's an hour between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. when you're awake but not out of bed. That's where my mind goes, starting to think of, okay, I've got that situation. Here's what they want, what could be done, but here are the downsides, here's the upsides. And usually I'll come back and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. And then this is why. So it's definitely a charismatic leadership style. It is also one on reflection, as well as one on patience. I don't. People that want to know me don't come to me and want an answer right away. It's just, I will do it if I have to. I don't like doing it, but I will. As obviously, my position, I make those types of decisions. But you also reflect on the decisions I make impact a lot of people, and it's not, the decisions I'm making tend to be large decisions as well. And so they typically carry or demand a little more thought put into them before making those decisions.
And so with 2,000 employees under your care, what's your direct reports? How many direct reports do you have?
I restructured the organization, as you remember when we were on holiday talking, and I had 9 direct reports for my position. That's a lot. So I've dwindled that down to 3 direct reports plus my assistant. So it would be a total of 4.
Excellent.
And that is working out wonderfully.
Well, that's why you're on the podcast a year later, because
You're right.
you've now got the time, right?
Correct.
I think I should just let the listeners know how we met. So, we were in Solvang. I was with my family, and I was chilling in Solvang's a beautiful kind of town in between Los Angeles and San Francisco, and I was just chilling on the front veranda, and Chuck came up and brought some guacamole and said, "Here, would you like to try some of this?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, not bad." So we were eating the guacamole, and then he came out with some orange juice, and he'd said that the guacamole was, I get it from my garden. I have avocados in my garden. And then he came with some orange juice, and we were sat with my kids, and the kids was like, "Daddy, why are they bringing us this stuff?" And I said, "Because they're friendly, right? They're being friendly." And then I remember I said to you, "So where did the orange come from?" And you said, "I've got a couple of orange trees in my back garden." And I said, "You've got avocados, you've got oranges in your back garden. How big is your is your back garden?" And I don't think you ever told me. You were very humble about it. But what came across immediately was this. You, as you said, when you mentioned the word charismatic, and I think that came across when you and I first met, and it's why we're still talking now. When you look at that and you think about your leadership style, and then you transpose that onto negotiation when it comes to negotiating, are there any similarities between your leadership style and your negotiation style?
I think so. I did very well in grad school with negotiation. My techniques are a little unusual. I remember having in grad school, I remember having a negotiation class and pitted groups of three students, and we had a similar case where we did financial analysis, and then we had to basically broker a deal. And the first group came in and they said, "Okay, here's what it is." And they did all the math correctly, and that was really good. And it was too good. And so what we did was we made a ploy that their math was wrong, and we came in at a completely different number. And you could see them like, "What?" And they had to go back and huddle, and they were redoing all their calculations, which were already correct. But they were like, something's wrong. And the teacher's like looking at us like, "What are you doing?" And then you got a little smirk, and he's, "I know what you guys are doing." Yeah. And before you know it, we actually negotiated a price. This was acquisition of a company. A price of the company well below market and below valuation because of the approach we took. And a lot of it is, it's the selling component. It's being able to sell what it is. Now, usually when I'm being charismatic, I'm not doing it to be deceptive. In that particular mock setting, yes, I was. In most cases, no. It's not trying to be deceptive. It's trying to understand what both parties want, and understanding that most of the time you end up in the middle. And so trying to understand how best to get to the middle. Trying to understand how the other side is going to get there, but also understanding what the other side needs. Both sides need something. And the best rule of negotiation is the ability to walk away. If you're willing to walk away, you can negotiate really well. And the unfortunate thing is most people are unwilling to walk away. They want something, and they're like, "I gotta have this." You're going to pay a premium to do that.
Yeah.
But yes, so I do think there is some similarities in my leadership style and how I approach those types of situations. But also, when I do a negotiation, I usually say, "Okay, here's the value of the asset that we're looking at. And, here's what they're asking for that." And then I'm like, "Okay, well, here's where I want to be. So here's where I'm going to go in over here." And I draw it. So I'm a very visual person. I can see a lot in my head, but I do like to actually, I was very good at drawing back in grade school and through high school. So, although I haven't picked up a pencil to draw in a long time.
So when you're in the middle of a negotiation at the moment, we obviously won't go into the full details of this negotiation, but I think it was interesting you were telling me that you gave a number and that was your number. And most people are taught in negotiations to kind of, here's my reservation price, that's the number, that's the bottom line number. But then on top, then you inflate it by, I don't know, 20%, 30%, and then you kind of look for your zone of probable agreement in between. But I actually like what you have done is where you've actually come out front and said, well, that's my number. There's no game playing here. That's my number. And if we can't come anywhere near close, I'm ready to walk away. Can you explain what's the mindset behind doing that?
That approach is actually later in the negotiation. So what you previously explained, which is what most people will allude to on negotiation, is where we started. They had a price, and I'm like, well, okay, that price is way too high. And I'm going to come down here, and then they budged a tiny bit. Yeah. I mean, very little, and which told me, okay, well, this isn't going to go very well. And so at that time, I just agreed to what they wanted. Then, knowing that there's a couple more steps to this negotiation, and so I was like, I'll get you on round 2. And so here we are at round 2, and round 2 is, I want this, and I'm not willing to budge. It is that. And it's a take it or leave it type of approach, because it is where we should have been, but I knew they weren't going to go there on let's say round 1.
Right.
On round 2, I'm confident they will, because they know the interest is there. I've had some time to really evaluate their need as well as their product, and their product isn't as great as they think it is, but at the same time, they can't walk away from this as easily as I can, which tells me that they're going to give that little bit now that they wouldn't have given before.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is timing, and then also understanding your opponent.
Yeah, and I never like to use the word opponent when it comes to negotiating, because then it makes it seem like
you can tell I'm fresh into this one.
yeah.
But I will tell you, my board made it very clear: don't make this personal, Chuck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're right. I was like, you're right.
And that's the thing. It's hard when you say that. What they're really saying is don't get emotional, right? Don't let your emotions get involved. Whereas it's actually impossible to do that because you're not a tree, right? So you are going to feel some level of emotion in the negotiation. How do you manage that when you're feeling either, maybe you're feeling intimidated, or you're disappointed, or you're just generally pissed off by the way they're acting within the negotiation? How do you handle your emotions?
A lot of time it's time. So, for example, after that first round, I can tell you, working with my broker got that. My broker, I was irritated, I was upset, I was profanity, you name it, it was there. And fortunately, it was a voicemail. Okay. And they knew I was irritated. But once again, I take some time. It's one of those where they always tell you write an email, but don't send it.
Yeah.
I've made the mistake of sending a few of those, and I will agree, best not to send. And so I don't do that anymore. Yes, you write the email, you set it aside. You will technically, another hour or so, go back through, reread it. If it's really heated, then you save it for the next day. Some of my staff will actually input it into AI and say, AI, how would you make this if you were telling the same message to a loved one or a dear friend, and it'll lighten the mood. So there are some tools, but time definitely helps. But also having an intermediary. So knowing that I have that broker that I'm talking with, as opposed to the, let's say, other party, for lack of not using my opponent term.
Right. So, I mean, Chuck, the story that really, really impacted me when you and I spoke, if you remember, is, you alluded to it already, that you were a workaholic, right? You just go for it. You show me an opening, and I just go for it, and that's what made you such a huge success in your company, and you've continued to grow in the company. I remember the story you said that this all came to a head when your health suffered quite badly. I'm not. I don't know whether you're open to share the story.
I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, if you weren't, I would edit it out. So
I am fine with it.
yeah. I mean, would you, share the story of that moment that happened? You know, I remember you said that everyone had left the office. There was just you and maybe one or two other people, and something happened, and your lessons from that.
This was during the pandemic, so during COVID. So it was a time when most of my staff was telecommuting from home. I do have some staff that weren't able to, and so I was actually in the office. And you're right, most of my corporate office was empty. There were two other managers with me, and basically I was 49 at the time. Not pretty healthy. Diet maybe a little different, but yes, and I don't recall the incident, but I've had people piece it together. But I had wrapped up a Zoom call. I had gotten up and went to the restroom, came back, supposedly had conversations with some people in the hallway, went into my office, and then I collapsed. It was like somebody hit a light switch, and I just hit the ground. My assistant, who was next door, came in because she heard the thud of me hitting the concrete floor, and immediately began CPR. And then my property manager, the other individual, called 911, and then they basically swapped, giving me the life-saving measures. Which is a testament to why I don't have brain damage. I was actually unconscious or deceased for 4 minutes before I was revived. Paramedics and fire showed up, hit me with an AED, had hit me twice. Before I was revived, my assistant was going through trauma because I was turning blue. She's like, I've never seen someone turn blue before. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this wrong. And still seeking therapy to this day for the incident that went on. And I keep reminding her, you did everything right, which is why I'm here. And then I crashed another 2 times in the ambulance. But supposedly, to your point of workaholic, supposedly when they hit me with the AED the second time in my office, I jumped up and I told everyone, hey, everyone back to work. And and they were like, no, sit back down. We're taking you to the hospital. And I was rushed to the hospital for surgery. And I was in ICU for the night. They moved me to the cardiac floor. And then I wanted to be, released. And so within 36 hours, I was released from the hospital. My sister is a nurse, and so she was a live-in nurse. She stayed with us at home. And yes, I wanted to get back to work. I wanted to get back to doing what I needed to do, projects of the house as well as work. And it was just my body wasn't enabling me to do that. So to answer your question, or to further that with what lessons learned, obviously I eat a lot healthier today than I did back then. Hence the garden that we put in at the house. We call our executive chef garden. All the vegetables and fruit that we eat, majority of it we grow on property. So yeah, we have an executive chef garden, we have an orchard, and we have we're putting in a vineyard. Not that I drink a lot, but yeah. So lessons learned is to it's not all about work.
Yeah.
And work will be there with or without you, because the company, at that time I was the COO, CFO, and CEO of the company. And fortunately I had a board member that was able to step in and do the day-to-day approvals that were necessary while I was out. I was out full-time for probably only 3 weeks. And then I was like 2 hours a day because basically after the heart attack, basically, my heart was only operating at half capacity, which basically means it was operating around 30%. Heart's usually around 65. And basically meant that after 2 hours I was exhausted. I needed to take a nap. And it was done. And that was very frustrating. But you learn to know that, well, a couple things that I learned from that. Obviously, got to eat healthier. It's not all about work. Work's important, and you got to do it, but you got to spend time with loved ones. You got to spend time with family, and because you never know when your time is going to be up. Yeah. And the other thing is, a lot of my friends, others that I've seen have heart attacks. They don't change. Now, I don't remember what happened, so it's as if it never happened. And I think it has impacted those around me more than it has me. And talking with them, they appreciate the efforts that I've made to position myself not to have that happen again. Because too many people go through what I do, don't change anything, because they're thinking about themselves and not those around them. And same thing with my leadership style. One of the biggest takeaways that I can tell people that I learned when I stepped into the role of CEO is what I do as CEO and what I say and who I say it to is huge to those that work for my company. I just walk in, go do my thing. The fact that I didn't say hi to somebody is huge to that person. And when I say hi to somebody, when I ask how their day is, they're like, oh my gosh, that's the CEO of the company that is asking me how I'm doing. Whereas normally, to me, I'm just a normal person. And it's too easy to know that you're a normal person, you're just trying to get something done, you're trying to focus on the company as a whole, but you really need to remember that it's the people that are making up what that is, and whether that's in your personal life or at work. It was the biggest takeaway to this day of being in this role.
And that brings me to my next question, which is so beautifully segued in. This podcast is called Empathy at the Table, and it doesn't matter whether you're at the negotiation table, you're at the boardroom, or you're even at the dinner table. Right? The whole idea is how do you actually build in empathy into your day-to-day approach? And there always exists a tension, I find, between companies who are pushing for profits versus companies that are looking to build long-lasting, trusting relationships based around empathy. And sometimes it seems that the two are mutually exclusive. Where do you shake out on that? I mean, you lead a team of 2,000 people. You're speaking in a very empathetic way now. How do you, what would you say to that?
I would say that I'm kind of known as the fixer. People come to me with problems. I've got situations where I tend to be the mediator. I've got somebody needs this, somebody this, whether that's internal departments that both have that, struggle between the ideal solution, or it's an external party and an internal party. What I try to do is really understand where both sides are coming from. So it's like, okay, tell me pros and cons for your side, your pros and cons for your side. And what I try to do, and usually pretty successful, is finding a creative, some would say innovative, I like to use creative, solution or remedy where both sides are pretty happy about the outcome, whatever that might be. Not all the time, but the majority of the time I really try to. And I think that's really what has elevated me up, is my work ethic, but also my willingness to not take things personally and say, you know what, I need this, you need that. But ultimately, what are both missions? There's a greater good. Yeah. So if I concede something, give it to you because it meets that greater good, we all win. Yeah. So sometimes it's bringing in that greater good piece that the two sides aren't looking at.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah. I definitely 100% agree with that. This idea of having a conversation between two entities or more entities, about something that everybody cares about, because that's why you've shown up at the table, or that's why you're in conversation. But then committing to creating something that we can both walk away with and feel that we may not be 100% happy with what we walk away with, but we want to feel that we've been heard, and that our perspectives have been listened to, and we've also done the same for the other person. And if both of us are aiming to find out something that's better than we could have done on our own, then we walk away feeling satisfied. And I like people to walk away feeling satisfied with the process, as well as feeling satisfied with the outcome. And if you can just feel satisfied, if you know you've done everything, like you said in your earlier negotiation, this is my final number. If you can't beat that number, I know I've done everything. There's nothing more I could have done, and you walk away and you're comfortable with that.
Correct. And you've looked at everything. It helps you sleep at night.
Yeah.
And I sleep very well at night.
Now, and there's something else as well, Chuck, that you said. Sorry, I'm kind of repeating all the things that stuck in my mind from our conversation a year ago. And because I was asking you, in your position, what's the end game for you? What's the legacy you're looking to leave? And, what's the purpose in you doing what you're doing as a leader? And I remember you smiled and said, well, the answer I'm going to give you is probably not the answer that you're expecting, because I don't have this big purpose that I want to, leave this huge legacy. But my company's been really good to me over the last 30 years. And I just want to leave the company in a great position to give other people in my team and my company the same opportunities that I had. Do you remember saying that?
I do, and I was gonna say, it hasn't changed. It has not changed.
What a wonderful mantra to have, right? That you're in a company, the company's treated you well. It's given you, many, many opportunities, and so you just want to do the same for other people. I think if all leaders had that kind of attitude, or all managers had that kind of attitude, I think we'd be we'd be in a lot better place with some of the companies that we're in today.
Yeah, I think employees would probably stay at companies longer and wouldn't jump around as much as you see. And we have a very good, as you can imagine, we have a very good track record of a lot of our employees. I am not the longest tenured employee here. I have there's at least 5 more that I can think of that have been here longer than me. And it is not uncommon when we go around the table introducing ourselves, that's 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, is not uncommon. And I think a lot of that has to do with, obviously, the stability of the industry. But all of that is being challenged today, as well as most economic times right now. But it's the culture, it's call it my leadership, the leadership of the organization. And we've got a very great board of directors that help me provide that direction to be able to do what we're doing and continue doing. I mean, I don't always want to hear what they're saying, but I understand that, what, you guys are telling me the right thing, and you're right. I should be doing that, and let me do better, and let me get that done.
And to somebody who's now perhaps going into leadership for the first time, let's say someone fresh out of university, or they've just freshly been promoted into a leadership position, where they have the ability to either imprint their style of leadership, an empathetic, compassionate style of leadership into the company, or they have to default to maybe going back to looking at a capitalist, solely focused on profits. End of Q1, we have to make sure that we beat Q2, Q3, Q4. What would you say to them in terms of how to build in that style of compassion into ensuring that you're both profitable, but also making sure that you're creating the right environment for your team?
It's doable. I mean, it really is. I mean, I can tell you that while I'm focusing on the leadership aspect and developing individuals, I'm also, at the same time, my board is saying, even though you're nonprofit, you still got to generate surplus to put in reserves for future things. So still being able to do a little bit of both. And it can be done. It's a little more challenging, but it can be done. And sometimes, it's a restructure of the organization. No one wants to see a restructure of an organization. But once again, when I restructured the organization, I did it with a commitment that I wasn't laying anyone off. I was repurposing people. So I had said, hey, I'm very strategic. That would be another leadership piece. My girlfriend and I will play like checkers, and she hates playing games with me, period. Because she's like, you know what? And it was a great analogy. She's like, here we are playing checkers, but you're playing chess. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Because I've already won 3 more moves or 5 more moves. We're done. And she's like, see, this is why I can't play games with you. So it has to do with that negotiation piece, but it's also that leadership style that I've got to be thinking 5 years down the road and where we're headed. But even personally, my girlfriend doesn't think that way. And I would talk about things 5 years and it would drive her nuts. So I've learned she just wants to know about what's happening this month. Anything beyond this month, even though it's going on in my head, just bite my tongue. I'll bring it up next month. And it's interesting. You just figure out what's going to work in the environment that you're at. And it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all, but you just need to figure out what's important to you and what you're willing to compromise on and what you're not. And just basically put that in the back of your mind and then, focus on those two competing issues. And you're going to find there's a lot of overlap. And there's a lot that can be done to further both at the same time. There's going to be a give and take on both sides. And that's just, don't rush to make that decision. Take your time and try to vet as many of those solutions as you can. The role of CEO is all about it's strategy. And it's making the best decision with the information that you have at that time. The more time you're given, the more information you can have. And the better that decision could be. Sometimes your gut is going to tell you the right answer or the best answer. More time could be a worse. Most of the time it should be better. And never turn away access to information or knowledge. I can tell you that sometimes I'll be at a baseball game and I'm talking to somebody and they're telling me something. Doesn't make a lot of sense right then and there, but then a day or two later, somebody comes to me. I had HR come to me saying, oh, you may not know about this, but this just happened. I'm like, that didn't just happen. That happened on Friday because that's what I heard at the baseball game. Somebody told me that's what was happening. And so you never know. And whether that's because by having that information, you may not need to use it right then, but having it will help you inform the decisions you're going to make. And let's say, I don't want to say assumptions, but the hypotheticals that you might come to, those will help better inform those, and those hypotheticals will become more and more accurate. And then what you'll find is you're going to have a lot of individuals within and externally of the company that are going to come to you saying, hey, what do you think is going to happen in this situation? So-and-so is leaving. What do you think? And you're just be very careful. We say, well, I think this is probably the most likely. You don't have to explain why, but because you've talked to all these different people, I know what's going to happen, or pretty close to what's going to happen. So the more information you have, and just don't rush to that answer, I think will help a new person, because you're going to have to find out what your leadership style is and be open to change, because your leadership style day one is going to be one way and it's going to slightly change over time. You do those leadership tests, give you an idea.
Self-assessment test,
So I am an INTJ, if you know what those are.
The Myers-Briggs,
Yes.
Myers-Briggs.
So I'm an introvert, and I don't come across as an introvert, but I'm an extrovert at work and I'm an introvert at home. And what they say is, someone comes across as an extrovert. Introvert, extrovert, it's where you get your energy from.
Yeah.
And it's why I'm exhausted at the end of a day at work, because I've given more than I can. And so I prefer not to. I prefer quiet, just leave me in my office, let me get done what I want, and let me work for like 5 hours and be done for the day. But that's not how
Yeah.
the world works.
Chuck,
More information.
we're coming to the end, and this is your first podcast, and I think you've done a fantastic job. I think you're charismatic, you're comfortable, you've been really open. So I hope our listeners will find this even more interesting than I found, which I don't think is going to be possible, because I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
I appreciate the positive comments. I'm getting the sense you're setting me up to a second podcast.
Well, I mean,
warming me up to one.
I was thinking it could take place on, when the vineyard kicks in.
Okay.
And our next visit to LA.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
How can our listeners find you if they want to? Just because I've checked, I think you've got less than 1,000 followers on LinkedIn, so you're not really active on LinkedIn.
But LinkedIn is where you would do it.
Okay, so because if somebody wants to find you, I think you're one of those guys. Hey, listen, I'm so busy working and enjoying life that I look at LinkedIn, but I don't need to be there on LinkedIn.
That is,
if somebody wanted to check to hook up with you or contact you, what's the best way, Charles?
LinkedIn is the best way, because that will send an email to me.
Okay.
And I'm one of those zero inbox people. Although right now I've got 2 legal cases going on. I've got property in escrow. I've got negotiation. I've got 3 board meetings this week and over the next 2 weeks, and I've got 22 emails in my inbox. That's it. And I don't have a pseudo inbox. I don't move my inbox in, and I don't do that. So, and I was at 8 or 7 on Friday. So
that's impressive. Impressive.
I don't believe in zero, but I believe in a very small inbox. And so
what
I
do
monitor.
You deal with them straight away as soon as they come in. You deal with them, or so it's like I reply or I delete.
Yeah, they're addressed. So the 21 that are in my inbox are the ones that I need to address.
Okay.
Everything else, I think the last time it was like 50,000 emails that are in my email folders and everything. Those have all been addressed to the point where it's not on my plate anymore. So it might get kicked back to me, but for the most part, no. And I still like a lot of the contracts and everything are paper. And they come across my desk, and so you can see my desk is pretty empty. And the whiteboard is clear.
I can see that, yeah.
But yes, LinkedIn is the best way. I'm not as active as I'd like to be on LinkedIn, and that's just because of the focus personally as well as work at this time. I got rid of the Facebook. I got rid of all the social media. I don't need all that. And that, like I said, LinkedIn will channel into my work email and my personal email. I do check that every morning as well. And so email is the best way to reach out to me.
Fantastic. Well, Charles Kissel, I want to thank you for a scintillating conversation. Thanks for joining us on Empathy at the Table.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.